For 500 years, we've been told that Michelangelo Buonarroti was simply a divinely inspired artist who happened to paint an unusual number of muscular naked men on the Pope's ceiling, because, well, that's just what Renaissance artists did, like how your uncle insists he only watches women's volleyball for the athletic technique. We've nodded along to art historians who explained that those 20 nude figures writhing across the Sistine Chapel were purely theological symbols. Nothing more to see here, move along please. The official story was that this lifelong bachelor who never married wrote passionate love sonnets to a younger nobleman, and filled every available surface with idealized male body as he was just really, really devoted to his art. That story might be missing a few chapters. Tonight, you are Michelangelo Buonarroti, and it's 1512 in Rome. You're 57 years old, which in Renaissance terms makes you a survivor. You're lying on your back on scaffolding 60 feet above the Sistine Chapel floor, paint dripping into your eyes, your neck screaming in ways that would make a torturer take notes. Pope Julius II keeps climbing up here to ask when you'll be finished. And you keep telling him, when I am finished, which is your polite way of saying, get off my scaffolding before I paint you as a demon in hell. And here's the thing nobody talks about in the Vatican gift shop you're encoding messages in these frescoes that won't be fully understood for another 4 centuries. You're gay in an era where being caught means death, and you're painting your truth on the most sacred walls in Christendom. You're not just creating art. You're hiding in plain sight, using pigment and plaster to write love letters that the church itself will preserve for centuries. The evidence for this isn't some conspiracy theory cooked up by someone who spent too much time staring at ceiling frescoes through binoculars. When conservators cleaned the Sistine Chapel between 1080 and 1994, removing centuries of candle soot and some previous restoration attempts that involved bread and Greek wine. Yes, someone thought wine would help preserve frescoes. They found something that made Vatican officials shift uncomfortably in their elaborate chairs. The male figures weren't just idealized. They were lovingly, sensually, almost photographically detailed in ways that had nothing to do with biblical storytelling. The restoration revealed skin tones so delicate you could practically feel their warmth, muscular structure so precise it could serve as an anatomy textbook, and expressions of ecstasy that seemed more appropriate for a very different kind of religious experience. One Vatican official reportedly muttered that perhaps they should have left the candle's soot where it was. This discovery, made when the world was slightly more ready to have this conversation, reveals something extraordinary about how queer people have always existed, always created, and always found ways to speak their truth even when that truth could get them burned at the stake. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists and art historians found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable life of a man who turned the Pope's chapel into history's most elaborate coded message. But before we begin this journey together, write in the comments where you are listening from. It's fascinating to learn where in the world you are. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about every piece of Renaissance art you've ever seen. Chapter 1. The Vatican's uncomfortable discovery. You're still on that scaffolding. Michelangelo, painting Ignudo number 50 of 20. And your assistants below are mixing fresh pigments, while trying not to stare too obviously at the models you've hired. The Vatican won't know what you've really done up here for another 468 years. When they finally figure it out in 1980, it'll be because a team of conservators led by Gianluigi Colalucci starts removing centuries of grime from your frescoes, expecting to find hidden details in the drapery. What they'll actually find is that you've turned the Pope's ceiling into Renaissance Rome's most elaborate thirst trap. The first indication that something was different came when they began cleaning the lunette, those curved triangular spaces above the windows where you painted the ancestors of Christ. As the centuries of candle soot came away, the figures emerged not as the stern biblical patriarchs everyone expected, but as beautiful young men in various states of undress, their bodies twisted in poses that seemed to have wandered in from a very different kind of commissioned artwork. One figure, supposedly representing Aminadab from the genealogy of Christ, sits with his tunic hiked up, one leg spread, gazing directly at viewers with an expression that can only be described as "come hither." This is not how anyone typically depicts Christ's great-great-great-grandfather. You know this because you painted him that way on purpose using marker, the stonecutter's son with the remarkable cheekbones as your model. But the real shock for those future conservators will come when they reach your Ignudi, those 20-seated nude males that frame the central biblical scenes. Right now, as you paint them, everyone asks why they're necessary. They don't appear in the Bible. They don't represent angels. Angels have wings. And these boys decidedly don't. Your official explanation is that they represent the perfection of God's creation, which sounds reasonable, until anyone realizes that God presumably also created women, and yet your ceiling is notably light on female perfection. Each one is different, specific, painted from life. Antonio, your assistant, is number 3. You can see his farmer's tan even now as you add the final touches. Giovanni, who brings you water and claims he's 19 but is probably younger, is number 7 with that specific pattern of chest hair you spent an entire afternoon sketching while he dozed in the afternoon light. The Vatican's response to these discoveries in 1980 will be fascinatingly measured. They won't be able to deny what's emerging from beneath the grime too many art historians watching, documenting, photographing every square inch. Instead, they'll pivot to discussing your Neoplatonic ideals and your celebration of divine beauty through human form, which is a very elaborate way of saying, yes, he painted a lot of sexy naked men, but in a spiritual way. The official Vatican guides will begin emphasizing how these figures represent the soul's journey toward God, which doesn't entirely explain why the journey apparently requires so much hip definition. What makes you smile, even through the pain in your neck, is that everyone already knows. Just last week, Cardinal Alidosi climbed up here, took one look at your latest ignudo, and asked if perhaps you could add more drapery. You told him that God created man naked in Eden, and who was he to improve upon God's design? He left muttering about propriety, but he'll be back next week to check your progress, staring a bit too long at the figures he claims to find inappropriate. They all know. The Pope knows. His cardinals know. They're paying you to paint naked men on their ceiling because you're Michelangelo, and genius apparently comes with certain allowances. The restoration will reveal something else about your work. You're incredible. Attention to male beauty isn't just general appreciation. These aren't idealized figures from your imagination floating in theological space. Each body is different, specific, real. The musculature isn't generic in that Greek statue where you've included scars, birthmarks, the way Tommaso's left shoulder sits slightly higher than his right. You're painting portraits of your desires, and the church is paying you 3,000 ducats to do it. Chapter 2, your secret sonnet surface, 20 years from now, in 1530. 2. You'll meet Tommaso de Cavalieri, and your life will never be the same. You'll be 57, he'll be 23, and you'll fall harder than a block of Carrara marble off a mountain cart. But right now, on this scaffolding in 1512, you're already practicing the art of encoding desire into art. The sonnets you write at night by candlelight in your workshop are rehearsals for that future passion. You're teaching yourself a language of longing that the world won't fully understand for centuries. You've already written over 100 sonnets, and they're good, not good for a visual artist, good, but legitimately accomplished poetry that would still be studied, even if you'd never picked up a chisel. The problem is, these sonnets are extremely explicit about your desires. Not metaphorically, but I burn for your touch like fire, consumes dry wood explicit. In one, you write about how love has made you a target, shooting arrows that pierce through your eyes to your heart. You compare yourself to a fish caught on a hook, drawn inexorably to beautiful young men. The pronouns are all masculine, the desire undisguised in the original Italian. Your grandnephew, Michelangelo the Younger, and yes, that's what he'll call himself, which shows spectacular lack of imagination, will inherit these poems after your death in 1564. He'll read them, presumably clutch his pearls, and decide something must be done. He won't destroy them. They're by Michelangelo, after all, and the family needs the prestige. So he'll do something almost worse. He'll change all the pronouns. Every he becomes she. Every masculine adjective gets feminized. And suddenly you'll be heterosexual. Your passionate declarations to young men become conventional, courtly love poetry. It's like someone taking your diary and replacing every mention of your actual crush with a nice girl from church. This butchered version is what the world will read for the next 3 centuries. Scholars will quote these edited sonnets as evidence of your interest in women, despite the fact that everyone who knows you can confirm you have about as much interest in women as you do in eating, which is to say, you do it when absolutely necessary and complain the entire time. It won't be until 1893 that John Addington Symonds publishes the original versions, and even then he'll have to do it privately in an edition of just 100 copies, because Victorian England won't be ready for the full force of your thirst. Right now, though, you're living the experiences that will fuel those future sonnets. Every beautiful assistant who climbs this scaffolding, every model who poses for your sketches, every young man who catches your eye in the Roman markets, they're all entering your mental catalogue, being transformed into art and poetry. You're creating a secret autobiography in verse, one that your nephew will try to censor, but which will ultimately survive because truth, like fresco painted on wet plaster, becomes permanent once it sets. The sonnets reveal something crucial about your psychology that's true even now in 1512. You're not tormented by your sexuality in the way historians will love to imagine. You're tormented by the gap between what you feel and what you can express publicly. When you finally write to Tommaso, how can it be that I'm no longer mine? Who has taken me from myself? You'll be articulating something you've felt your whole life, the splitting of self that comes from hiding in plain sight. But you're also demonstrating remarkable resilience, turning that torment into art that transcends its circumstances. What's remarkable is how you use the same language in your poetry. that you use in your painting. Beauty as divine revelation, physical perfection as a window to the spiritual. Your Neoplatonic philosophy isn't just intellectual cover for your desires. You genuinely believe that beauty, specifically male beauty, is a pathway to understanding God, which is convenient when you're painting biblical scenes and need to explain why Adam looks like he should be modeling togas in ancient Athens. You're creating a theological framework for desire, turning your orientation into orthodoxy through sheer artistic will. Chapter 3, Living Double in Renaissance Florence. You learned the rules of survival early, back in 1476, when you were just 21 and still an apprentice to Domenico Ghirlandaio in Florence. You watched your colleague Leonardo da Vinci, yes, that Leonardo get anonymously accused of sodomy with a 17-year-old model named Jacopo Saltarelli. The accusation was dropped into one of Florence's tamburi, those charming wooden boxes placed around the city where anyone could denounce their neighbors for moral crimes. Think of it as Yelp reviews, but for destroying people's lives. The officers of the night, and yes, that was their actual title, which sounds more like a bad police procedural than a real judicial body, arrested Leonardo and 3 other men. The penalty for sodomy in Florence was burning at the stake, though they usually commuted it to a massive fine and exile if you were wealthy enough. Leonardo got lucky. The charges were dropped, probably because one of the accused was related to Lorenzo de' Medici's mother. But the message was clear: keep your private life private, or become a cautionary tale told around Florentine dinner tables. That lesson has shaped everything about how you live now in 1512, painting this ceiling. You've cultivated a reputation for being impossible to deal with, antisocial, obsessed with your work. You claim you're too busy for relationships, too devoted to art for earthly pleasures. When patrons offer to arrange marriages, because that's what patrons do apparently, along with commission chapels, you decline with elaborate excuses about how women would interfere with your art. You live like a hermit, or at least perform hermithood convincingly enough. Your workshop is your world, populated by assistants and models who understand the unspoken rules. The irony is that everyone in Florence's art world was playing the same game. Donatello, the sculptor whose David inspired yours, lived openly with his assistants in what chroniclers delicately called close friendship. Botticelli never married and was denounced for sodomy in 1502. Giovanni Bazzi literally called himself Il Sodoma and painted his self-portraits around by badgers, which in Italian slang meant, well, let's just say it wasn't about the animals. The entire Renaissance art scene is gayer than a Medici wedding feast, but everyone had to pretend otherwise or risk those officers of the night showing up at their door. Your daily routine here in Rome is an elaborate performance. You wake before dawn in your workshop. You actually do sleep there most nights, surrounded by half-finished sculptures and marble dust. You work until your assistants arrive, young men chosen as much for their beauty as their skill with a chisel. Everyone pretends not to notice that your workshop has more attractive young men than a monastery school. You teach them to carve marble. They pose for your drawings, and absolutely nothing else happens, officially speaking. When clients visit, you're gruff, distracted, covered in marble dust and paint. You've perfected the character of difficult genius, too consumed by art for human connection. But at night, when the workshop is closed and Rome sleeps, you draw not the preparatory sketches for commissions, but private drawings, gifts for friends who understand. These drawings are extraordinary, finished presentation pieces that take weeks to complete. You give them away like love letters to young men in your circle. Most will be destroyed, too dangerous to keep, but some will survive, hidden in private collections, passed down through families who understand their value goes beyond artistic merit. They're evidence of your shadow life, your parallel existence, where you can express what daylight forbids. Chapter 4. David's defiant gaze. 11 years ago, in 1501, you stood before a block of Carrara marble that 2 other sculptors had already butchered. The block was 18 feet tall, narrow, and had a hole hacked through it where someone tried to carve legs and gave up. The Opera del Duomo commissioned you to turn this disaster into something presentable, maybe a profit for the cathedral roofline. Instead, you created the gayest statue in Western art, and everyone put it in the town square and celebrated it. The nerve of you still makes you smile when you think about it. You decided on David, the biblical hero who defeated Goliath. But your David wasn't the victorious boy standing over a severed head that Donatello had sculpted. Your David was caught in the moment before the fight, naked, vulnerable, and absolutely ripped. He stands in contrapposto, that classical Greek pose that does wonderful things to hip definition. His hand is oversized. Art historians will spend centuries debating whether this represents the hand of God, or if he just messed up the proportions. They're missing the point. Those hands are powerful, capable, designed to make viewers imagine what else they might do. The face is what gives the game away. David's expression isn't fearful or determined or any of the emotions you'd expect from someone about to fight a giant. He's got what can only be described as resting thirst face. His brow is furrowed, his lips are slightly parted, and he's gazing off to the left with an intensity. That has nothing to do with looking for Goliath and everything to do with cruising. He looks like he spotted someone across the piazza and is deciding whether to go say hello. The statue was supposed to represent Florence's republican virtues. Instead, it represents that very specific feeling when you see someone attractive at the gym. When you unveiled the statue in 1504, the public response was immediate and intense, and not entirely positive. Within months, people were throwing rocks at it. Someone tried to damage it with a hammer. During political upheavals, mobs attacked it specifically, as if David himself was the problem with Florence. Art historians usually attribute this to political symbolism. David, representing the Republic, attacked by supporters of the Medici. But you know there's something else going on. This statue makes people uncomfortable in ways they can't articulate. It's too beautiful, too sensual, too knowing. It's a 17-foot-tall thirst trap carved in marble. Now, as you paint your ceiling, you're applying the same principle but multiplied by 20. Each of your ignudi is a David in miniature, that same knowing gaze, that same casual display of physical perfection, that same sense of being looked at and enjoying it. You're creating an army of Davids on the Pope's ceiling, each one a challenge to anyone who thinks desire can be legislated away. What's brilliant about David and about these ceiling boys is how you've weaponized the classical tradition. You can't be accused of impropriety. You're following Greek and Roman sculptural traditions. Heroic nudity is standard for important figures. If viewers are reading sexuality into it, well, that's on them, isn't it? You've created plausible deniability in marble and fresco. When British critics complain about the nudity, defenders can point to classical precedent. When gay men stand before it and see themselves reflected, they know exactly what you've done. It's a dog whistle carved at a frequency only certain people can hear. The detail that really drives people crazy about David, and that you're replicating in paint up here, is the anatomical precision. You carved David's pubic hair with an accuracy that borders on obsessive individual. Curls rendered in stone, the veins on his hands and arms, the tendons in his neck, details that serve no purpose except to make viewers imagine this as a real body, a specific body, someone you've observed with the attention of a lover. And now you're doing the same thing 60 feet in the air, painting body hair and veins and individual fingernails on figures that most people will never see clearly from the ground. It's obsessive. It's unnecessary. It's absolutely intentional. Chapter 5, The Ignudi Conspiracy. You're painting Ignudo number 90 now, and your back feels like someone's replaced your spine with molten lead. Pope Julius II climbed up here yesterday to complain about the pace. When will you finish? He demanded. When I'm finished, you told him, which is your standard response. He threatened to have you thrown off the scaffolding. You threatened to leave Rome entirely. Then you both laughed, because you've had this exact conversation 17 times. And you both know you're not going anywhere until this ceiling is complete. It's become almost a ritual, this theatrical antagonism that masks genuine respect. But here's what Julius doesn't fully understand. These 20 nude figures you're painting have absolutely no theological justification for existing. They're not in the Bible. They're not part of Christian tradition. The official explanation that they represent the beauty of God's creation falls apart when anyone notices you've painted 20 naked young men and exactly 0 naked young women. God apparently only created one gender worth celebrating, and that gender is doing a lot of stretching and flexing on this ceiling. Each ignudo is different, specific, portrait-like. Number 3 has that farmer's tan you mentioned to your assistant was worth preserving for posterity. Number 7 has a specific pattern of chest hair that you spent 3 afternoons perfecting. Number 12 is making an expression that your model Renzo couldn't hold for more than a minute without laughing. These aren't idealized figures from your imagination. These are people you know, bodies you've studied, men you've desired. You're painting your love life on the Pope's ceiling and billing him for it. The arrangement is deliberate too. The ignudi frame the biblical scenes, but they are often more prominent, more detailed, more lovingly rendered than the actual religious subjects. Viewers' eyes are drawn to them first. You've made the decoration more important than the content, the frame more compelling than the picture. It's like building a cathedral and making the gargoyles more interesting than the saints, which, now that you think about it, is also something you might do if given the chance. The poses tell their own story. One figure reaches across his body in a twist that shows off every muscle group. You had Antonio hold that pose until he complained his arm was going numb. Another lounges with one leg spread, arm behind his head, in what can only be called a pin. Up pose, that's Marco, who knew exactly what he was doing and winked at you while posing. A third clutches drapery that strategically reveals more than it conceals. These aren't just nude figures. They're nude figures who know they're being looked at and are enjoying it. You've painted exhibitionists on the Pope's ceiling and somehow convinced everyone This is about Neoplatonic ideals. What's even more subversive is how you've integrated them with the biblical scenes. The ignudi hold oak garlands, symbols of the Della Rovere family, Pope Julius II's clan. So they're not just random pretty boys, they're pretty boys personally connected to the Pope. You've essentially painted the Pope's heavenly harem and gotten him to pay for it. The sheer audacity would be breathtaking if you weren't already out of breath from lying on your back for 4 years. Chapter 6, the artist's last laugh. You won't live to see it, but you already know how the story ends. 52 years from now, in 1564, you'll die at the age of 88, having outlived most of your enemies, all of your popes, and unfortunately most of your lovers. Your last official act will be burning correspondence, not all of it. You're too much of an egotist to destroy everything, but specific letters, specific drawings, specific evidence of specific relationships. You'll be curating your own legacy, deciding what future generations will know about you. But here's the beautiful irony that makes you smile even as paint drips in your eyes. Your real autobiography isn't in letters or documents that can be burned. It's being painted right now on the most protected ceiling in Christendom, carved into marble that will outlast empires. Every pope from now until the end of time will conduct mass beneath your gay ceiling. Every Catholic who enters the Sistine Chapel will pray surrounded by your boyfriends. You're turning the Vatican into the world's most unlikely guardian of queer history, and they can't do anything about it because you're Michelangelo. The attempts to straighten your legacy will begin immediately after your death. Giorgio Vasari, your biographer and supposed friend, will publish his lives of the artists and somehow forget to mention your complete lack of interest in women. He'll invent a story about you almost marrying, claim you were too devoted to art for earthly love, and basically write you as an asexual workaholic. It's like someone writing a biography of Elton John and forgetting to mention the sunglasses and the husbands. Your grandnephew will continue his pronoun swapping campaign with your sonnets. The Counter-Reformation will go into overdrive, adding draperies to your Last Judgment. They'll hire artists to paint loincloths and veils over your figures, turning your celebration of the male form into a weird modesty parade. The irony is that by calling attention to what they're covering, they're essentially highlighting exactly what made them uncomfortable. It's like putting a giant arrow pointing to everything gay in your art. But here's what they won't be able to change: the way young men, especially young gay men, react when they see your work. You know this because you watch it happen even now. Your assistants look at what you're painting and see themselves reflected not just in fresco but in possibility. They understand that someone like them can create beauty that the world is forced to acknowledge. Your art is becoming a secret handshake across centuries, a way of saying, we've always been here that no amount of drapery can cover. The restoration of the Sistine Chapel in the 1980s and 90s will become your ultimate vindication. The conservators will remove not just the centuries of grime, but also many of the added draperies, the fig leaves, the strategic clouds that prudish later generations added. Your boys will emerge in their full glory, and this time the world will be ready. Art historians will finally admit what's been obvious for 5 centuries. You were gay, gloriously gay, and it informed every brushstroke and chisel mark you ever made. Modern Rome will become the stage for your final joke. Catholic pilgrims from around the world will pay good money to stand beneath your gay ceiling and admire your gay statue. They'll buy postcards of your barely clothed ignudi in the Vatican gift shop. They'll wear David on t-shirts and refrigerator magnets, this naked man who embodies desire on items blessed by the Pope. You're turning the Catholic Church into the world's most successful distributor of homoerotic art, and they won't be able to stop because the tourism revenue will be too good. Your influence will extend beyond just the art world. Every gay artist who comes after you will learn from your example, not just your techniques, but your strategies. How to hide in plain sight. How to use beauty as a weapon. How to make your truth so magnificent that even those who would deny it are forced to preserve it. You're teaching future generations that survival sometimes means painting your love on the ceiling of your oppressor's chapel and making them thank you for it. Right now, adding the final touches to Ignudo number 19, you pause to consider the magnitude of what you're doing. In a few months, the scaffolding will come down. The Pope will hold a mass to consecrate your work. Cardinals will praise your devotion to God's glory. And you'll stand there knowing that you've just completed the greatest act of artistic subversion in history. You've painted your authentic self on the Vatican ceiling, and they're going to protect it forever. As our journey through Michelangelo's secret codes concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. The story of Michelangelo isn't just about one artist's hidden sexuality. It's about how marginalized people have always found ways to exist, create, and thrive despite oppression. It's about how art becomes resistance, how beauty becomes rebellion, how love finds a way to express itself, even when that expression could mean death. Every queer person who has ever had to hide their truth who has ever spoken in code, who has ever found clever ways to be themselves in hostile spaces, is part of the same tradition that led Michelangelo to paint 20 unnecessary naked men on the Pope's ceiling. The next time you see the creation of Adam, and you will, it's on everything from coffee mugs to dental office ceilings, remember that you're looking at a love portrait. When you see David, remember you're seeing defiance carved in marble. When anyone tries to tell you that gay history started at Stonewall, remind them that we've been here all along, painting ourselves into the very foundations of Western culture, too beautiful to be erased. Until our next archaeological adventure together, this is the sleeping archaeologist encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history. But for now, stay tuned as we have a bonus story coming right up, read especially for you by our guest narrator.
Bonus story. Your skull has a secret what medieval surgery was really like when you think of medieval medicine. What's the first image that pops into your head? Go on, be honest. It's probably a grim-faced fellow in a vaguely ridiculous cloak, holding a rusty knife in one hand and a leech in the other, standing over a pale, whimpering patient. The room is dark, the hygiene is questionable at best, and the doctor's primary medical advice is to pray while he prepares to solve your headache by, bleeding you out. It's a scene straight out of a Monty Python sketch where the cure is objectively, comically worse than the disease. We've been fed this image for centuries, the idea that the Middle Ages were a 1,000-year-long dark age of superstition, where medicine was just guesswork wrapped in religious dogma. And your chances of surviving a visit to the doctor were slightly lower than your chances of successfully teaching a cat to file your taxes. We picture them as simple, ignorant folk, baffled by the workings of the human body, attributing every ailment to an imbalance of black bile, or the wrath of a displeased saint. They were just waiting around for the Renaissance to invent science, right? They were fumbling in the dark, armed with nothing but poultices made of questionable herbs and a profound misunderstanding of how germs worked. The whole era was, medically speaking, a complete write-off. Well, that's the story we've been telling ourselves anyway. It's a convenient one because it makes us feel terribly clever and advanced with our sterile hospitals and ibuprofen. It was all just leeches and luck. Tonight, you are going to learn that this assumption, this comfortable caricature of the ignorant medieval peasant is spectacularly and fundamentally wrong. Tonight, you are a master stonemason living in London, somewhere around the year 1340. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, roasting meat, and the kind of damp, organic scent that 1,000 years of human activity leaves behind. Your hands are calloused, your back aches, and your world is one of stone, dust, scaffolding, and the precise, rhythmic chime of hammer on chisel. You are a craftsman, a skilled professional in a world built by hand, and you are about to suffer a catastrophic, life-threatening injury. Your survival will depend not on prayer or luck, but on a medical procedure so sophisticated, so daring, that for centuries we simply refused to believe it was possible. You are about to have brain surgery, and you are going to live. The proof of your story, the hard, undeniable receipt for this incredible event won't be found in a dusty manuscript or a faded tapestry. It will be found 700 years later, buried carefully in a churchyard. It is your own skull. Archaeologists will lift it from the earth, and they will see it. A perfectly circular hole cut into the bone of your forehead. The edges of the hole won't be sharp and jagged, the telltale sign of a post-mortem injury or a procedure that failed. No. The edges will be smooth, rounded, and covered in the unmistakable pattern of healed bone. It's the kind of evidence that leaves no room for debate. It's the skeletal equivalent of a signed doctor's note, confirming not only that you underwent a terrifying, delicate operation, but that you lived and lived for years, possibly even decades, afterwards. Your very bones are the evidence that rewrites the history books. This discovery, made in various forms across medieval Europe, reveals something extraordinary about the practical, hands-on medical knowledge of the past. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in a world without antibiotics or antiseptics. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about medicine, survival, and the remarkable resilience of the human body. Your day begins not with an alarm clock, but with the bells of a nearby church. Sound so familiar it's more a part of the air than a disruption of it. Light filtering through the single unglazed window of your small timber-framed house is gray and thin. You can already smell the city waking up the smoke from 100 hearths, the pungent aroma of the baker down the lane firing up his oven, and the ever-present underlying smell of the Thames at low tide. You share this small space with your family, a jumble of sleeping forms under wool blankets. Privacy is a concept that, much like germ theory, has yet to be invented. You pull on your woolen tunic and leather boots, the materials coarse but warm against the morning chill. Your joints protest your maybe 35, which in your line of work feels closer to 55. The constant lifting of stone, the repetitive motion of the chisel, the damp cold of English winters, it all settles into your bones. A low, persistent ache that's as much a part of your life as the taste of ale. You break your fast with a hunk of dark, heavy bread and a piece of cheese. It's simple, functional fuel as a master mason. You're part of a skilled artisan class. You're not a peasant tied to the land, nor are you a wealthy merchant. You exist in the growing middle, a man whose worth is measured in the precision of his work. Your guild membership provides a safety net, a brotherhood of craftsmen who regulate trade, ensure quality, and in times of trouble, support the families of their members. It's the medieval version of a union combined with a social club and an insurance policy. It's a good life, a respectable life, but it is a physically unforgiving one. You look at your hands. The skin is a roadmap of old cuts, scars and calluses thick enough to turn away a splinter. Every man in your trade has hands like these. They are the tools of your livelihood. Walking to the worksite is a full sensory experience. The streets of London are narrow, winding lanes, packed with people, carts, and animals. The upper stories of the houses lean out over the street, nearly touching in some places, creating a permanent twilight below. The ground is a treacherous mix of mud, cobblestones, and whatever refuse was thrown from the windows the night before. You learn to walk with your head up, not for pride, but to avoid an unpleasant surprise from above. The city is a cacophony of sounds, the rumble of wooden cart wheels, the shouts of vendors selling everything from pies to eels, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of a dozen different languages and dialects. It is chaotic, vibrant, and overwhelmingly alive. And it is filthy. There's no polite way to put it. The concept of sanitation is, to be generous, in its infancy. It's a bold, citywide experiment in competitive immunology, and you are a lifelong participant. This ever-present background of grime is the silent thread that governs so much of life and death. A small cut, a simple scratch from a misplaced tool, can become a raging infection within days. You've seen it happen. You've seen strong men felled by a fever that started with a wound no bigger than your thumbnail. Everyone has. Death is not a distant, abstract concept. It is a constant, familiar neighbor. You've lost siblings in childhood to diseases that no one had a name for. You've seen friends die from dysentery, from infected teeth, from the endless list of ailments that thrive in a world without antibiotics. The local churchyard is a testament to this reality. Archaeologists of the future will dig there and find the bones of children who never reached their 5th birthday, their small skeleton marked by the telltale signs of malnutrition and disease lines of arrested growth in their bones. Porous-looking eye sockets from anemia. They will see your future neighbors, their teeth worn down to stumps from a gritty diet, abscesses leaving hollows in their jawbones, a permanent record of agonizing pain. They'll see spines twisted by years of hard labor. Your own skeleton, should you live so long, will tell a similar story of a life lived hard. But for now, you are strong, you are skilled, and there is work to be done. The worksite is a controlled chaos of human effort. You're part of a team building a new section of a great church, a monument of stone and faith meant to stand for centuries. The air is filled with the sharp smell of cut stone and the fine, gritty dust that gets into your clothes, your hair, your lungs. You spend your days perched high on wooden scaffolding, a structure that would give a modern health and safety inspector a heart attack. It is held together by ropes and sheer optimism. There are no hard hats, no safety harnesses, no steel-toed boots. Your safety relies on your own agility, your experience, and the competence of the men who tied the knots that morning. You trust them just as they trust you. It is the only way this work gets done. Your job today is to finish the intricate carving on a block of limestone, a delicate floral pattern that will adorn a window arch. You find your rhythm, the familiar dance of mallet and chisel. The stone slowly gives way, surrendering to your vision. It is satisfying work. You're not just building a wall. You're creating beauty, turning inert rock into something that will draw the eye heavenward for generations to come. Hours pass in this state of focused labor. The sun reaches its zenith, and the crew breaks for a midday meal. You find a spot in the shadow of a half-finished wall, sharing bread, ale, and conversation with the other masons. The talk is of guild business, of city gossip, of the quality of the stone from the new quarry. It's a moment of camaraderie, a brief respite from the physical toll of the job. But the work is never far from your mind. You look up at the massive, skeletal structure of the church rising against the sky. It is a testament to human ambition and ingenuity. It is also, you are keenly aware, a place of immense danger. Everyone knows someone who has fallen, or been struck by a dropped tool or dislodged stone. The risks are simply accepted as part of the trade. You finish your ale, clap a friend on the shoulder, and get back to it. The afternoon wears on, the shadows lengthen, and the rhythmic sounds of construction continue. You are so absorbed in the delicate final touches of your carving, getting the curve of a petal just right, that you don't notice the subtle shift in the planking above you. You don't hear the faint creak of stressed wood or the small shower of dust that precedes the real danger. The first indication that something is wrong is a sudden, sharp crack from above. It's a sound that cuts through the familiar din of the worksite, a sound that makes every man freeze. You look up, and for a split second, you see it, a heavy wooden mallet, inexplicably dislodged from the scaffolding 2 stories above, is tumbling end over end, silhouette against the gray sky. There is no time to react, no time to even shout. There is only the brief, abstract realization that it is falling directly towards you. Then comes the impact. The impact and its aftermath. It is not a sharp pain, not at first. It is a dull, explosive concussion. A stunning blow to the side of your head that feels less like an impact and more like the world itself has been struck by a giant's hammer. Your vision erupts in a flash of white light, then collapses into a swirling, confusing darkness. The sounds of the worksite dissolve into a dull, rushing roar in your ears. You are vaguely aware of falling, of your body slumping from the wooden platform, but there is no sensation, only a profound and terrifying sense of disconnection. You are floating in a black, silent void. The last coherent thought you have is a simple, primal one. This is it. This is how it ends. You drift in and out of a painful, disorienting fog. Sometimes you are aware of movement, of being carried. You feel the jolting sway of your body and hear muffled voices, distorted and distant, as if coming from underwater. You try to open your eyes, but the effort is monumental. When you succeed, all you see are blurry shapes and a sky that seems to be spinning. The pain begins to assert itself now, a deep, throbbing agony that seems to radiate from a single point on your skull, encompassing your entire being. It is a living thing, pulsing in time with the frantic, terrified beat of your own heart. Your comrades are trying to save you. They carry you down from the scaffolding with a desperate gentleness. Their face is a mixture of fear and grim determination. They lay you on a makeshift stretcher, a wooden plank between 2 men, and begin the urgent journey through the city. The trip is a special kind of hell. Every jolt of the stretcher, every uneven cobblestone, sends a fresh wave of blinding pain through your head. The vibrant, chaotic sounds of the London streets are now a nightmarish assault on your senses. A dog barks, and it feels like a nail being driven into your brain. A cart rumbles past, and the vibration travels up through your body, making you want to scream. You can smell the filth of the street, the smoke, the press of unwashed bodies, and the nausea rises in your throat. You are helpless, a broken piece of cargo being rushed to the one person who might have a chance of helping. You are not being taken to a hospital in the modern sense. Those are more like hospices, places of care run by the church, mostly for the poor and infirm to live out their final days in relative comfort. You are not going to a university-trained physician either. They are men of books and theory, more concerned with debating the philosophies of Galen and balancing the humors than with the messy, practical business of a shattered skull. Their treatments involve expensive prescriptions and complex dietary regimens, none of which are of any use to you right now. No, you are being taken to a man of a different sort. You are going to the workshop of a barber surgeon. The barber surgeon. This is a name that sounds almost comical to modern ears, like a side hustle gone wrong. We picture a man who offers you a shave and a haircut, and by the way, would you like that festering wound lanced while you're here? But this caricature is another deep misunderstanding of your world. The barber surgeons are the front line of practical medicine. They are highly skilled craftsmen, members of their own powerful guild, who deal with the physical realities of the human body. They set broken bones, pull teeth, stitch wounds, drain abscesses, and perform amputations. While the physicians debated theory, the surgeons got their hands dirty. They learned their trade through long apprenticeships, through observation, and through the grim but effective school of trial and error. They understood anatomy not from a book, but from the felt reality of muscle, sinew, and bone. They are the pragmatists, the engineers of the human body. And you're about to become their most challenging project of the day. Your friends carry you into his shop. The air inside is thick with a strange, not entirely unpleasant smell, a mixture of dried herbs, cloves, wine, and the faint coppery scent of blood. It is darker in here, a relief to your light-sensitive eyes. Bunches of dried plants hang from the rafters, on a wooden table against the wall, laid out with a craftsman's precision, are the tools of his trade. To a future observer, they would look like instruments of torture. There are saws of various sizes, sharp-pointed lancets, probes, forceps, and cauterizing irons resting near a small brazier of glowing coals. But to you in this moment, they represent the slim, terrifying possibility of hope. You are laid gently on a long wooden table in the center of the room. The surgeon, a man with hands as calloused as your own, but with a different kind of dexterity, approaches. He leans in close. His face is serious. He smells of soap and wine. He carefully, gently probes the wound on your head. His touch, though clinical, is surprisingly deft. You flinch, a groan escaping your lips as a fresh spike of pain shoots through you. He murmurs something soothing, a professional, calming sound that transcends language. He inspects your eyes, your breathing. He asks your friends questions you can't quite follow. You are drifting again, the pain pulling you down into the darkness. But you hear snippets. The bone is pushed in, pressure on the brain pan. If we do nothing, the sentence hangs in the air, unfinished but understood by everyone. Without intervention, you will die. The pressure from the fractured pieces of your skull, pressing down on your brain, will kill you, either quickly from the injury itself or slowly from the swelling. The surgeon straightens up. You can see him contemplating. This is no simple wound to be stitched and bandaged. This is a matter of the most delicate and dangerous kind of work, an intrusion into the very seat of the soul, the vessel of the mind. He makes his decision. You understand it not from his words, but from the way he turns to his assistant and gives a series of short, quiet commands. The assistant begins to select specific tools from the table. Another brings you a cup of wine, heavily spiced and strangely thick. It's drugged, you realize, an opiate. Likely, or mandrake, or some other potent concoction designed to dull the senses and bring on a stupor. It's the best anesthetic they have. It won't render you unconscious, not completely, but it will. With any luck, push the pain to a manageable distance. You drink it down. The taste is bitter, but you welcome the promise of oblivion it contains. The surgery, the next phase, is a blurry, nightmarish sequence of sensations. Your head is propped up. You feel the cold steel of a razor as they shave the hair from around the wound. The scraping sound is loud, intimate, amplified inside your own skull. The surgeon cleans the area with a cloth soaked in wine. The alcohol stings but also cleanses. This is a crucial step. While they don't understand germ theory, they have learned through brutal experience that clean wounds heal better than dirty ones. Wine, with its alcohol content, is one of their most effective, if unintentional, antiseptics. Then the real work begins. The surgeon selects a tool. Future archaeologists will find examples of these in medical kits buried with surgeons of your time. It's a specialized instrument, a type of cranial drill called a trephine. It consists of a handle and a shaft with a circular, saw-toothed blade at the end. In the center of the blade is a small, sharp pin designed to anchor the tool to the bone and prevent it from slipping. The assistant and one of your friends hold you down, their hands firm on your shoulders and legs. They are not being cruel. They are saving your life. Any sudden movement from you could be fatal. The surgeon leans over you, his face a mask of concentration. He places the central pin of the trephine against a solid part of your skull, near the fracture. He whispers a final instruction. Be still. And then he begins to turn the handle. The sensation is impossible to describe. It is not pain, not in the way a cut is pain. The bone of your skull has no nerve endings. It is a sound. a vibration that you feel in the very core of your being. It is the sound of a carpenter drilling into a dense piece of wood, a low, grating, scraping noise, except the wood is you. You can feel the pressure, the steady, rhythmic turning. You can smell the faint, almost unnoticeable scent of heated bone dust. Time seems to stretch and distort. The drugged wine has wrapped your mind in a thick, cottony blanket, but you are still aware, still present for this horrifying, intimate act of violation and healing. The surgeon works with slow, practiced patience. He drills, then stops to clear the bone dust away. He probes the depth of the cut. He cannot go too deep. He knows that just beneath this thin layer of bone lies the durameter, the delicate membrane protecting the brain itself. A slip of an inch, a moment of carelessness, and the tool would plunge into the brain, causing irreparable damage or instant death. His entire training, his entire career, has led to this moment of intense focus. He's walking the finest of lines, a razor's edge between life and death, and he's doing it with a hand tool, by feel and by sound alone. It is an act of incredible skill and terrifying bravery, both on his part and on yours. After what feels like an eternity, there is a change in the resistance, a subtle give. He's made it through the inner table of the skull. He carefully withdraws the trephine. Now he uses other instruments, small layers and elevators, to gently pry up the depressed fragments of your fractured skull, relieving the pressure on the brain beneath. You feel a strange, almost imperceptible release, a lessening of the deep, internal pressure that has been crushing your mind. The most dangerous part of the surgery is over, but the battle for your life has just begun. Recovery. The surgeon now has to close the wound. He will not replace the circle of bone he has removed. Instead, the gaping hole in your skull will be left to be covered over by your own body. He carefully cleans the wound again with wine. He may apply a dressing of clean linen soaked in egg white, which will act as a sealant. He might pack it with sphagnum moss, a common wound dressing of the era which future scientists will discover has remarkable antiseptic properties. He then bandages your head tightly, wrapping layers of cloth to protect the vulnerable area. The surgery is complete. You are exhausted, traumatized, and hovering in a state between stupor and consciousness. Your friends pay the surgeon a significant sum, but one the guild will have cover. And then, with the same gentleness as before, they prepare to take you home. Your future now hinges on one simple, terrifying question. Can your body fight off the infection that is almost certain to come? The days that follow are a feverish blur. You lie in your small house, the sounds of your family in the city outside filtering as if from a great distance. Your wife tends to you constantly. She feeds you broth, spoonful by spoonful. She keeps you hydrated with water and weak ale. She changes the dressings on your head, her hands gentle, her face edged with worry. This care is just as critical as the surgeon's skill. Good nursing, cleanliness, and nutrition are your best defenses now. You are in a war against an invisible enemy. Every pang of heat, every shiver, every throb of pain from your head is a battle in that war. You have a raging fever at times. You are delirious, lost in nightmarish visions. You see flashing lights, hear voices that aren't there. The pressure in your head is immense. This is the crisis point. This is where many would have been lost. An infection in the bone, osteomyelitis, or in the brain lining, meningitis, would be a death sentence. There are no antibiotics to call upon, only the strength of your own immune system and the folk wisdom of herbal remedies. Your wife applies poultices of herbs known for their healing properties, comfrey, yarrow. Whether they work or are merely a comfort, no one knows for sure, but they are all you have. For days, your life hangs in the balance. You are walking the knife's edge. Your family watches. They pray. They wait. The surgeon visits. His presence is a grim reminder of the ordeal. He inspects the wound, his expression unreadable. He changes the dressing himself, his movements economical and precise. He nods, says a few words to your wife, and leaves. It is all he can do. The rest is up to you and to whatever luck or divine providence you can muster. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tide begins to turn. One morning you wake up, and the crushing pressure in your head has eased just a little. The fever, which has been burning you up for days, seems to have broken. You are weak, drenched in sweat, but your mind feels clearer than it has since the accident. You can see your wife's face, and for the first time, you can offer her a weak, tired smile. The worst is over. You have survived the immediate aftermath. You have fought off the infection. You have against all odds won. Your recovery is long and arduous. For weeks you are bedridden. Your strength returns at a glacial pace. The simple act of sitting up is a monumental achievement that leaves you exhausted. The wound on your head begins to heal. The skin knits itself together over the hole, forming a tough, protective layer of scar tissue over the vulnerable brain beneath. You learn to live with your new reality. You have a soft spot on your head, a permanent, tangible reminder of your brush with death. You must be careful for the rest of your life. Another blow to that same spot would be instantly fatal. But you are alive. As the weeks turn into months, you slowly regain your place in the world. You begin to walk again, at first unsteadily. Then with growing confidence, you return to the worksite. Not as a mason, at least not at first. Your balance is not what it was, but your knowledge, your skill in planning and design, is still invaluable. You become a foreman, a master overseeing the work of others, your keen eye ensuring the quality you can no longer produce with your own hands. You live. You go on to have more children. You watch them grow. You grow old, or at least what passes for old in the 14th century. The ache in your joints gets worse. Your teeth continue to decay. Life remains a daily struggle. But every morning when you wake, every time you feel the sun on your face, you are aware of the miracle of your continued existence. You are a walking testament to the skill of a man who drilled a hole in your head to save you. You are living proof that his world was not as dark and ignorant as a future age might believe. You eventually die, perhaps from the great pestilence that is coming. The Black Death that will sweep across Europe and change your world forever. Or maybe you die peacefully in your bed, an old man surrounded by your family. You are buried in the local churchyard, in consecrated ground, your body wrapped in a simple shroud, and there you will rest, undisturbed for centuries. The archaeological discovery of the earth will cover you. The city of London will grow and change and burn and be rebuilt above you, and your story will be forgotten until one day, in a time you could not possibly imagine, a team of archaeologists will be excavating that old churchyard before a new office building goes up. They work carefully, methodically, scraping away the layers of soil, revealing the secrets of the past. And they find you. Your skeleton is laid out, aligned east to west, as is the custom. They can tell a great deal about you just from your bones. The robust muscle attachments on your arms and shoulders speak of a life of heavy physical labor. The slight curve in your spine tells of years spent leaning over your work. The wear on your teeth reveals the gritty, coarse diet of your time. They see you not as a collection of bones, but as a person, a life lived. And then they see your skull. Hey, the archaeologist who lifts it from the ground will pause. She will run a gloved finger over its surface, feeling the unmistakable, perfectly circular hole. She will see the edges, and her breath will catch in her throat. The bone is not sharp or fractured. It is smooth, rounded, and dense. The porous, woven texture of new bone growth covers the entire circumference of the hole, a clear, unambiguous sign of long-term healing. This is the moment your story is reborn. This is the hard evidence that silences the skeptics. You didn't just undergo trepanation, you thrived after it. Your skull becomes a celebrity in the world of osteoarchaeology, the study of old bones. It is photographed, measured, CAT scanned. It becomes a case study, a piece of evidence used to teach students about the realities of medieval medicine. Your single, silent skull tells them so much. It tells them that people in your time had a sophisticated, practical understanding of treating head trauma. They knew that relieving pressure on the brain was the key to survival. It tells them that surgeons possessed not only the courage to attempt such a procedure, but the incredible skill to pull it off with rudimentary tools and no modern technology. It proves that they had some effective methods of pain management and post-operative care. Otherwise, you would never have survived the ordeal and the subsequent risk of infection. Your skull, and others like it found across Europe, forces a complete re-evaluation of the past. It replaces the caricature of the bumbling, leech-happy quack with a more nuanced, respectful portrait of a skilled practitioner working at the absolute limits of their knowledge. They weren't ignorant, they were resourceful. They weren't superstitious fools, they were pragmatic empiricists, learning from what they could see and touch. And your story is not the only one the bones tell. Elsewhere in that same cemetery, they find the skeleton of a man whose leg was clearly broken, a nasty fracture of the femur, but the bone has been set, and set well. It healed, albeit with a slight shortening of the limb, leaving the man with a limp but otherwise functional. He lived for decades after an injury that could easily have been fatal or resulted in amputation. They find the remains of people who suffered from leprosy. The disease left its horrific marks on their skeletons, the resorption of bones in the hands, feet, and face. But the evidence also shows they lived with the disease for a long, long time. They weren't all cast out to die alone. Many were cared for in dedicated communities and labor hospitals, receiving food and care for the remainder of their lives. The bones speak of compassion in an age we often characterize as solely brutal. They even find evidence of dentistry, not just the pulling of rotten teeth, which was common, but attempts to treat them. They find teeth that have been filed down to relieve the pressure from an abscess, and even, in rare cases, holes in teeth packed with a form of cement-like filling. It was crude. It was no doubt excruciating, but it was an attempt. It was a refusal to simply accept pain and suffering as inevitable. It was human ingenuity at work. Each of these skeletons is a voice from the past, speaking a language of bone and decay. They tell a story that is more complex, more surprising, and far more human than the one we thought we knew. They remind us that the people of the past were not fundamentally different from us. They loved their families. They feared pain. They hoped for a long life. And they did the absolute best they could with the knowledge and the tools they had. Your surgeon wasn't a wizard, nor was he a butcher. He was a man trying to fix a broken thing using the best technology available to him. And in your case, he succeeded spectacularly. Your skull is his masterpiece, the enduring proof of his skill, resting on a velvet cloth in a museum display case, continuing to teach a new world about the surprising realities of the old one. As our journey through the story of your remarkable survival concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the Stone-Wrought Historian, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Final bonus story. The witch trial test that wasn't a test, a medieval misogyny masterclass. There's a popular idea about the great European witch hunts that we all sort of quietly accept. We picture it as a moment of pure, unadulterated religious panic, a bunch of superstitious, torch-wielding villagers and wild-eyed priests running around absolutely convinced that magic was real, the devil was booking appointments in the local woods, and that certain members of the community had signed up for his frequent flyer program. The assumption is that the whole dreadful affair, from the accusations to the trials, was a misguided but sincere attempt to root out evil, a tragically flawed public safety initiative, if you will. We imagine the so-called tests for witchcraft, the infamous swimming test, the strange prayers, the demands to see a witch, as mark as crude but genuine diagnostic tools, like a medieval doctor trying to diagnose the flu by checking if you float. It all seems born of a terrifying but authentic belief system, a society gripped by a collective delusion, doing what it thought was necessary to protect itself from supernatural harm. It's a neat, almost comforting explanation. It puts the blame on ignorance on a less enlightened time. It lets us, in our modern wisdom, look back and shake our heads at their foolishness. But that's not really the full story, is it? To frame it as a simple matter of superstition is to miss the cold, bureaucratic, and deeply misogynistic machinery humming just beneath the surface. The witch trials weren't just a product of fear. They were a product of control. The tests weren't designed to find the truth. They were meticulously designed, with the precision of a surgeon and the soul of a tax auditor, to produce a very specific pre-approved result, a guilty verdict. The entire system was a performance, a piece of legalistic theater where the script was written long before the actors were dragged onto the stage. The old way of thinking was completely wrong. Tonight, you are not a crone hunched over a cauldron. You are not a cackling caricature from a fairy tale. You are a woman named Anna, living in the patchwork of German states in the late 1500s. You are 42 years old, a widow for the past 5 years, and you are by every measure a respectable, if somewhat isolated, member of your community. You own your small cottage, and the herb garden behind it, a minor miracle of independence secured by your late husband's careful work as a stonemason. You've been a midwife for 20 years, your hands the first to hold half the screaming, wrinkled infants in your village. You know which plants soothe a fever, which ones ease childbirth, and which ones can curdle milk if you aren't careful. This knowledge, once a source of respect, has become a liability. And tonight, the only thing that matters is that you are a woman alone, and you have been accused. The proof of your life, and the brutal rewriting of it will one day be distilled into two artifacts. The first is a court record, a sheaf of parchment filled with dense, spidery Latin. It's a document of chillingly mundane bureaucracy, listing the charges, the dates, and the expense incurred during your interrogation, including the price of the beer for your tortures. It reads less like a record of justice and more like an invoice for the systematic dismantling of a human soul. The second artifact is more intimate. It's a set of slender, polished steel needles kept in a worn leather roll. They are known as witch prickers. Some are simple, sharp implements. One, however, has a secret, a hollow handle into which the needle can retract with a bit of pressure. It is a tool designed not for discovery, but for fraud. These items are the receipts for a transaction that cost you everything, undeniable proof that your body was not a vessel for your spirit, but a piece of evidence to be searched, violated, and forced into a confession. This discovery, made not in a single dig, but through the painstaking archival work of historians piecing together the grim legal paperwork of the era, reveals something extraordinary about the weaponization of the human body in the pursuit of social control. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what inquisitors recorded, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in Reformation-era Germany. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about justice, belief, and the brutal machinery of power. Your world before all this, your world before all of this smells of wood smoke, damp earth, and crushed herbs. It is a small world, but it is yours. Your cottage has one room, a packed earth floor swept clean every morning, and a central hearth that is the warm, beating heart of your existence. In the summer, light streams through the single unglazed window, illuminating dancing dust, motes, and the drying bundles of yarrow, chamomile, and mint that hang from the rafters. The air is thick with their scent, a clean, sharp fragrance that clings to your clothes and skin. This is the smell of your trade, the aroma of healing and comfort. Soon they will say it is the smell of poison and deceit. You are a creature of routine. Your days are governed by the sun and the seasons, not by the clang of a town clock. You wake before dawn, the chill of the morning air raising gooseflesh on your arms as you stir the embers in the hearth back to life. You fetch water from the village well, a daily ritual that is also your main source of news and gossip. You learn who is sick, whose daughter is to be married, whose cow is looking thin. In the past, the other women would greet you with a nod, a quiet word of respect. You were Anna the midwife, a figure of some importance. You held the power of life in your hands, but lately the greetings have become hesitant. Eyes slide away from yours. Conversations drop to a whisper as you approach. The space around you at the well seems to widen. An invisible boundary they are all afraid to cross. They are afraid. Your hands are your most important tools. They are not the soft, delicate hands of a lady. They are strong, capable, the knuckles slightly swollen, the palms calloused from decades of grinding herbs with a pestle, tending your garden and kneading dough. These hands have guided new life into the world, cleaned and swaddled newborns, and comforted dying parents. They know the feel of a feverish brow, the reassuring weight of a healthy baby. You've always been proud of your hands. Now, when you look at them, you wonder what vile secrets others see in their lines and creases. Your husband, Stefan, was a good man, quiet, steady, built like the stones he worked. He left you with this house, this small patch of independence that is now both your sanctuary and your cage. Being a widow in this world is a precarious state. Without a husband or a father, you exist in a legal and social gray area. You are your own one, which to some is the most unnatural thing of all, especially a woman who owns property. You know that Herr Schmidt, a man on the town council with a weak chin and greedy eyes, has remarked more than once that your plot of land would be perfect for extending his own pasture. You dismissed it as idle talk. You were foolish to do so. The whispers began a month ago, after young Greta Bauer's baby was stillborn. It was a difficult birth, the cord wrapped tight, and there was nothing you or anyone could have done. You had seen it before. It was a tragedy, a sorrowful act of God. But Greta, mad with grief, needed someone to blame, and there you were, the woman who was present at the death, the one with the strange smelling herbs, and the quiet, watchful eyes. The whisper started there, a tiny spark in the dry tinder of your village's anxieties. Then, 2 weeks later, Herr Schmidt's prize dairy cow, the one he was so proud of, went dry overnight, was dead by evening. He didn't even try to be subtle. He stood in the market square and declared that his cow had been bewitched, his eyes finding you in the small crowd. Now the world has shrunk to the 4 walls of your cottage. You no longer go to the well at the busy hour. You go at midday, when you know it will be empty. You work in your garden with your back to the path, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. The silence is the worst part, the lack of friendly greetings, the absence of children's laughter as they pass your gate. It's an oppressive, heavy quiet that tells you more than any shouted accusation ever could. You are being erased from the community, one averted gaze at a time. You spend your evenings sitting by the fire, your hands lying idle in your lap, trying to pray. But the words feel hollow. You are trying to pray to a God whose supposed servants are about to accuse you of being in league with his greatest enemy. The irony is so bitter, it feels like bile in your throat. You know with a certainty that chills you to the bone that they are coming. It's just a matter of when. The arrest, you don't have long to wait. The knock on your door comes not in the dead of night, as you'd imagined, but in the flat, gray light of late afternoon. It's not a frantic, torch-lit mob. It's two men, the town constable, and his deputy looking uncomfortable and faintly embarrassed. This is not chaos. This is bureaucracy. They don't shout accusations, they mutter them, reading from a piece of parchment with an official-looking seal. You are to come with them on the authority of the magistrate, on suspicion of witchcraft. There is a moment, a sliver of time, when you consider refusing, barring the door, screaming. But you look at their faces, not cruel, just resolved, and you see the futility of it. The whole village is watching from their windows. Any resistance would just be another entry in the ledger against you. So you nod. You smooth down your woolen dress, take one last look at the herbs hanging from your rafters, and step out of your life and into their custody. The walk through the village is a new kind of agony. Every door is closed, every window shuttered, but you can feel the eyes on you. You are a spectacle now. Your private fear has become public entertainment, and you realize that your trial has already happened, right here on this muddy lane. What is to come is merely the sentencing. You thought the worst was the suspicion, but you're about to learn that the process of proving it is infinitely more terrible. The cell your new home is a small, windowless cell in the basement of the town hall. The transition is jarring. One moment you're in the open air. The next you are plunged into a world of cold stone and perpetual twilight. The only light comes from a flickering torch in the passageway, casting long dancing shadows that seem to mock you. The air is heavy with the smell of damp stone, stale sweat, and human despair. It's a thick, clinging smell that coats the back of your throat. The door is not made of bars, but solid oak with a small grated peephole. It thuds shut with a finality that echoes in your bones. You are no longer Anna the midwife. You are prisoner no. 4. Days and nights blur into one another. Time is measured only by the changing of the guards and the twice-daily delivery of a wooden bowl of thin, tasteless gruel and a chunk of black bread hard enough to break a tooth on. At first, you are consumed by a frantic, buzzing terror. You pace the small space 3 steps one way, 3 steps back, your mind racing, trying to find a way out, an explanation, a defense. You mentally rehearse your life, searching for any act that could be twisted into malice. The poultice you made for a sick child, was it the right one? The sharp words you had with a neighbor over a wandering chicken, was that the cause? You are performing your own interrogation, your own prosecution. But after a few days of this, a strange, weary calm settles over you. The terror recedes, replaced by a dull, aching dread. The sheer physical misery of the place grinds you down. The stone floor leaches the warmth from your body, and you are always cold. A thin, scratchy blanket is your only comfort. The silence is absolute, broken only by the distant sounds of the town above, a cart rumbling by, a dog barking, reminders of a world you no longer belong to. Sometimes you hear a faint groaning from another cell, a sound you try to block out. You spend hours sitting on the floor, your back against the cold, damp wall, just listening to your own breathing. It is in this state, exhausted, isolated, and malnourished, that they finally come for you. The Inquisitor is not what you expected. You had imagined a fanatic, a man with fire in his eyes and righteous fury in his voice. But the man who sits behind a heavy wooden table in the interrogation chamber is named Brother Marcus, and he is a clerk. He is middle-aged, with thinning hair, soft hands, and the weary, put-upon air of a man with too much paperwork. He is flanked by 2 assistants who arrange his quills, ink pot, and stacks of parchment with quiet efficiency. The room is stark, dominated by the table and a few heavy chairs. In the corner, draped in shadow, are other items. You don't let your eyes linger on them. This is not a battle for your soul, this is an audit. Brother Marcus consults a large, leather-bound book that lies open on the table. You will later learn that this is the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, a book that is part theological treatise, part legal manual, and part paranoid fantasy. It is, in essence, an instruction manual for misogyny, a detailed guide on why women are inherently more susceptible to the devil's temptations, and how to legally prove it. It's the worst book ever written, and for the next few weeks, it will be your biography. Brother Marcus speaks to you in a calm, almost bored tone. He asks your name, your age, your occupation. He is merely filling out a form. Then he gets to the point. He asks you when you first made your pact with the devil. You deny it, of course. You deny it. Your voice is a hoarse crackle from disuse. You try to explain who you are, a midwife, a healer, a good Christian woman. You speak of the babies you've delivered, the fevers you've soothed. You try to make him see you. But Brother Marcus isn't listening to your words. He is listening for a confession. He nods patiently, makes a small note on his parchment, and then explains, as if to a difficult child, that your denials are expected. The devil, he says, is cunning. He gives his servants the strength to resist, to lie, to feign innocence. But there are ways, he assures you, to uncover the truth. The body, he explains with a thin, dry smile, cannot lie. Your body will tell him what your mouth will not. The audit is about to get invasive. The search for the devil's mark, the first test, is a prelude, an exercise in humiliation designed to break your spirit before the real work begins. They call it the search for the sigillum diaboli, the devil's mark. According to the Malleus Maleficarum, when a witch makes her pact, the devil marks her with his claw or tooth, leaving a spot on her body that is insensible to pain and will not bleed. Finding this mark is considered irrefutable proof of the pact. It is also a perfect excuse for a methodical, top-to-bottom assault on your physical person. You are taken to a side room and ordered to undress. When you hesitate, 2 guards, the same men who brought you your gruel, every day step forward and rip the rough woolen dress from your body. You are left standing in a thin, coarse linen shift, exposed and shivering in the cold air. Then a man you had never seen before enters. He is the town barber surgeon, a man whose usual work involves pulling teeth and lancing boils. Today, his job is to shave every hair from your body. All of it, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet. The logic, as explained by Brother Marcus's assistant, is that the devil is clever and could hide the mark under a single hair. The reality is something else entirely. It is a systematic stripping of your identity. Your hair, which you used to braid so carefully every morning, is hacked off in rough handfuls and falls to the floor. The cold, sharp edge of the straight razor scrapes against your skin over and over in the most intimate places. You stand there, naked and bare, while this stranger handles you with the detached professionalism of a butcher preparing a carcass. The guards watch, their faces blank. There is no privacy, no dignity, no escape. You close your eyes and try to transport your mind somewhere else, to your garden, to the warmth of your hearth, to the memory of your husband's embrace. But the cold steel and the rough hands keep dragging you back. When it is over, you are a pale, goose-pimpled stranger. You don't recognize the person they have made you into. You feel like an object, a specimen laid out for inspection, and that is exactly what you are. The search continues, the search begins. Brother Marcus and the surgeon examine every inch of your exposed skin. They are looking for moles, warts, birthmarks, scars, any imperfection that can be rebranded as diabolical. A small brown mole on your shoulder that you've had your entire life is noted with a grunt of interest. A tiny scar on your knee from a childhood fall is measured and recorded. They are not looking for evidence. They are looking for an excuse. And on the blank canvas of a human body, excuses are everywhere. This violation, as complete as it feels, is just the opening act. The main event requires a specialist. The witch pricker arrives. The specialist arrives 3 days later. His name is Herr Dietrich, and he is a professional witch pricker. This is a real profession, a grotesque cottage industry that sprang up during the height of the witch panics. These men were freelance contractors of cruelty, traveling from town to town, their reputation built on their supposed ability to find the devil's mark where local amateurs had failed. Dietrich is a small, neat man with ink-stained fingers and the cold, assessing eyes of a predator. He carries his tools in a leather roll, which he unfurls on the table with a quiet flourish. You are brought back to the interrogation room, still in the thin shift, still shorn of all your hair. You are forced onto a stool in the center of the room. Herr Dietrich explains the procedure with the detached air of a lecturer. He will use his needles to break your skin if he finds a spot where you feel no pain or a spot that does not bleed. That is the mark. That is the proof. He doesn't mention that some of his needles have a retractable point. A devious little mechanism that makes it appear he is piercing your skin when the needle is simply sliding back into the handle. He doesn't need to. The outcome is already assured. He starts with the mole on your shoulder, the one Brother Marcus had noted. He takes a long, slender needle, its point glinting in the torchlight. You flinch as the tip touches your skin. He pushes, a sharp, searing pain shoots through you, and you cry out. A tiny bead of bright red blood wells up on your skin. Brother Marcus makes a note. Subject feels pain. Mark bleeds. They move on. The next hour is a blur of methodical, relentless pain. Herr Dietrich works his way across your body with chilling precision. Your arms, your legs, your back, your neck. Each prick is a small, sharp agony. You try to stay silent, convinced that showing any weakness is what they want. But it's impossible. You gasp, you sob, you bite your lip until it bleeds. Each reaction is duly noted by the scribe. He is searching for a natural numb spaticalis, or simply an area where nerve endings are less dense. Or he is waiting for the moment when you are so overwhelmed by the pain and the sheer sensory assault that your body's reactions begin to dull. And of course he has his special tool. He saves it for the scar on your knee. He makes a show of selecting a different needle from his roll. This one has a slightly thicker handle. He presses it against the old, silvery scar tissue. You brace for the pain, but feel only a dull pressure. He pushes harder. You look down and see the needle apparently sinking deep into your flesh. But there is no pain, no blood. Ah, Herr Dietrich says, a note of triumph in his voice. He withdraws the needle. The skin is unbroken. He turns to Brother Marcus. Anesthesia diabolica, he declares. The devil's anesthesia proof. You try to protest, to say that you felt nothing because nothing happened. But your words are a choked sob. You saw it. You saw the needle go in. Or did you? In your state of pain and terror, you can no longer trust your own senses. And that is the point. The entire procedure is designed to destroy your confidence in your own body, your own mind. It's a form of gaslighting conducted with sharpened steel. Brother Marcus smiles his thin, dry smile. They have their first piece of concrete evidence. The audit is proceeding splendidly. But there is more work to be done. The virginity test, the search for physical proof, is about to become even more intimate, even more degrading. After the pricking, you are given a day to recover in your cell. Though recover is hardly the right word. Your body is a constellation of tiny, aching wounds. You lie on the cold floor, shaking uncontrollably. Caught in the aftershocks of pain and humiliation, you had thought that was the worst they could do. The absolute limit of their invasive cruelty. You were wrong. The next phase of your interrogation is framed not as a test of your body, but as a test of your history, a test of your purity. You are brought before Brother Marcus again. He informs you, in that same maddeningly calm voice, that according to the accepted theological and legal principles, a witch seals her pact with the devil through carnal intercourse. Therefore, he explains, a true witch cannot be a virgin. It is, he says, a theological necessity to determine your status. It could potentially exonerate you. This is the twisted logic of their world. Your only path to potential innocence lies through a final, absolute violation. The promise of exoneration is a lie, a piece of procedural bait. Everyone in the room knows it. It's just another box to be ticked on their form. 2 women are brought into the room. They are not midwives or healers. They are sour-faced older women, wives of council members. Their presence is meant to lend a veneer of propriety to the proceedings. They are there to be the hands of the male authorities, to perform the intimate physical examination that the men, by law, are not permitted to conduct themselves. Their gender does not make them compassionate. It makes them collaborators. Their expressions are a mixture of grim duty and morbid curiosity. They look at you not as a fellow woman, but as a disgusting object of study. You are ordered to lie on the table. The 2 women approach. Their hands are rough and cold. What follows is a brutal, painful, and deeply humiliating examination. It is a clinical act of sexual assault disguised as a legal procedure. There is no gentleness, no concern for your pain or your shame. You stare at the damp stone ceiling, trying to detach your mind from what is happening to your body. You focus on a small crack in the stone, tracing its path with your eyes, making it the entire world. You feel a profound sense of dislocation, as if you are floating above, watching this happen to someone else. This body, which has birthed no children of its own, but has brought so many into the world, which has known the loving touch of a husband and the simple aches of hard work, is no longer yours. It is a piece of evidence, a site of investigation, an open book in which they are determined to write a story of guilt. The women finish their work. They confer in low voices with Brother Marcus, who listens intently and makes more notes. The verdict is, of course, ambiguous. At your age, a widow for 5 years, these signs are not clear. But clarity is not the goal. The goal is the process itself, the degradation, the destruction of your will to resist. Every one of these tests is designed to do the same thing, to isolate you from your own physical self, to make you feel alien in your own skin, and to break you down until you are ready to say whatever they want to hear. And they are very, very close to succeeding. Sleep deprivation, waking, the which the physical tests are largely over, but now they will turn to the mind. The most effective tortures, after all, are the ones that happen inside your own head. They have probed and pricked your body. They have searched your skin and your history for proof of their preconceived narrative. Now they will work on your mind. The next phase of your interrogation involves a technique known as waking the witch. It is simple, brutal, and terrifyingly effective. It is sleep deprivation. For days on end, you are not allowed to close your eyes. You are kept in your cell, but 2 guards are with you at all times. If you start to doze off, they will shout at you, shake you, or poke you with a wooden staff. If you collapse from exhaustion, they will haul you to your feet. At first, it is merely agonizing. Your body screams for rest. Your eyelids feel as if they are lined with sand. A dull, pounding headache takes up permanent residence behind your eyes. But after the 2nd day, something begins to shift. The world starts to lose its sharp edges. The torchlight in the corridor seems to pulse and breathe. The stone walls of your cell seem to ripple, as if they were made of cloth. You begin to have waking dreams. You see flashes of your garden in full bloom, so real you can almost smell the lavender. Hear your husband's voice, a low murmur just at the edge of hearing. Brother Marcus visits you periodically during this process. He brings his book and his quill. He asks you the same questions over and over. Did you dance with the devil in the woods? Did you curse Herr Schmidt's cow? Did you cause the stillbirth of the Bauer baby? In your exhausted, hallucinatory state, your sense of reality begins to fray. The line between memory and nightmare blurs. His suggestions, his leading questions, begin to plant themselves in your tired mind. He speaks of a witch's Sabbath, a wild gathering in a moonlit clearing. He describes it in such detail that you begin to see it behind your own aching eyes. You start to wonder, could it be true? Did you do these things? In a state of such profound exhaustion, the mind will do anything for a moment of peace. A confession becomes a tempting escape route. They supplement the sleep deprivation with other techniques. They force you to stand for hours until your legs swell and refuse to support you. They ply you with leading questions. We know you are not alone, they will say in a soothing, confidential tone. Just tell us the names of the others in your coven. Who else was dancing with you? They offer you a bargain. Your suffering will end. They promise, if you will only confess and name your accomplices. It is during this period that you become aware of another popular test, though they do not subject you to it. You hear the guards talking about a woman from a nearby village who was subjected to the wasserprobe, the ordeal by water. The logic of this test is a perfect diabolical circle. The accused is bound, thumb to opposite toe, and thrown into a river or lake. Since water is a pure element, it will reject the wicked. Therefore, if you float, you are a witch and will be taken out and executed. If you sink, you are innocent. You will also, in all likelihood, be drowned. It's a win-win for the prosecution. This knowledge does not terrify you. In your current state, it almost sounds like a relief, sinking to the bottom of a cold, quiet river seems preferable to this endless, sleepless torment. The breaking point comes on what you think is the 4th or 5th day of waking. You are no longer fully coherent. You are seeing things in the shadows of your cell. The faces of the guards morph into demonic leers. Brother Marcus's calm face seems to melt and reform as he speaks. He is asking you again about the Sabbath. And this time, in the shattered landscape of your mind, a memory surfaces. It is a memory of a midsummer festival years ago, when you and Stefan were young, a night of bonfires and dancing and too much ale. A happy, chaotic, human memory, but in your sleep-deprived brain. It twists and darkens. The bonfire becomes a hellish flame. The laughing villagers become leering demons. Stefan's face becomes the face of the devil, whispering promises in your ear. The false memory blooms in your mind with the full force of a real one. It feels true. You begin to weep, not from pain or fear, but from the horror of this newfound knowledge. You see it now. You were there. You did dance. You did make a pact. You are the monster they say you are. Brother Marcus leans forward, his voice a soft, insistent whisper. Tell me everything, Anna. Tell me what you did. And so you begin to talk. The words pour out of you. A jumbled mixture of his suggestions, your nightmares, and the twisted fragments of your own life. You confess. You confess to everything. To the cow, to the baby, to the pact. And then comes the final, terrible question. Who else was there? They slide a piece of parchment in front of you. It's a list of names, other women in the village, the grumpy widow who lives by the river, the young, pretty wife the magistrate has been eyeing, the woman who argued with her Schmidt over a property line. You know them. Some are your friends, and you, in your broken state, become the instrument of their destruction. You point a trembling finger. You whisper their names. The audit is complete. The books are balanced. Your confession is signed. Your fate is sealed. And you have just condemned others to the same hell. You have finally become the witch they created. As our journey through the chillingly bureaucratic world of the witch trial concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. The story of your ordeal fictionalized, but based on the grim reality of thousands of historical records, shows us that the greatest monsters are often not the ones we imagine in the dark, but the ones who hide behind paperwork, procedures, and the calm, unshakable certainty of their own righteousness. The tools of persecution were not just iron and fire. They were ink and parchment, psychology and systemic misogyny. This is the stone-wrought historian encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Good night.